Hi, folks. We're trying something new. In the past week or so, at least 3 different people have sent me messages regarding this article that I'm showing you on the screen from Vice magazine. And it's called Meditation is a Powerful Mental Tool, and for some people it goes terribly wrong. It starts off with a bang. Last November, on the Monday before Thanksgiving, David was sitting in traffic on his drive home from work. He was suddenly overwhelmed by the realization that everything he experienced was filtered through his brain, entirely subjective, and possibly a complete fabrication. Now, I know this feeling. This is a feeling that a lot of meditators get in a certain point in their practice. Not a unique or deep thought, to be sure, but I felt the world drop out from under me and experienced panic, and a certainty that if I chose to, I could go insane at that very moment, he tells me. David had a hunch about what had caused his panic attack: his meditation practice. He had begun meditating in August 2017. His gateway book, The Mind Illuminated by John Yates, never heard of it. And then Daniel Ingram's Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. Have heard of it, not impressed by it. In the first week, he could meditate for about 30 minutes a day, and a month later, he had a regular practice of 2 60-minute sits a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. That's a bit much for a beginner. I do about 60 minutes per day, and I've been doing this for 30-some years. 60 minutes per day is like my total on a normal day. So 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the evening, sometimes 25 in the morning, 25 in the evening. So 60 and 60 is kind of a lot. One thing that I did notice, and this much is clearer in retrospect, is that I was becoming withdrawn, he says. I started to lose interest in life a bit. I stopped playing guitar. I stopped listening to music, and cooking for my family started to feel more like a chore. Well, I hate cooking myself, but let's go on. Isn't meditation supposed to be the old practice that's going to cure us of our modern woes? It says mindfulness-based interventions for stress, addiction, chronic pain, mood disorders, psychiatric disorders, and fixing your sex life. Amid all this hype, often legitimate, Vice says, sometimes meditation goes wrong. For a minority of people who try it, meditation can lead to enduring changes in personality and mood, as mindfulness meditation and other varieties seep into many areas of life and health, and especially more people do it. Now, this article kind of goes on to talk about Willoughby Britton, who is somebody I've corresponded with a little bit, who runs kind of a facility for people who have bad experiences in meditation. And she published a study, increases in she says that the follow-up she's working on, she tells me there's the common symptoms: hyperarousal, increases in anxiety, fear, panic, insomnia, trauma, flashbacks, emotional instability. The list goes on. She started this group called Cheetah House about 10 years ago to help with people like this. It's been well documented that meditation can lead to troubling sensations. That's true. This has been known in Buddhism for a long, long time. Buddhist traditions have often referred to the varying effects of meditation. The terms niyams refers to a wide range of meditation experiences, from bliss and visions to intense bodily pain, psychological disorders, paranoia, sadness, anger, and fear. Zen traditions have long acknowledged the possibility for certain practice approaches to lead to prolonged illness, like a condition known as Zen Sickness or meditation sickness. The word I heard when I was first starting this meditation stuff was Makyo, which means world of the devils or demons. And I wrote about it in my first book, Hardcore Zen. There's a chapter in there called I Think of Demons, in which I recount some of my own experiences with this phenomenon. But let's keep going a little bit more through the article. Some meditators refer to it as a dark night. That's from Roman Catholic tradition, and we get Shinzen Young saying, "It is certainly the case that almost everyone who gets anywhere with meditation will pass through periods of negative emotion, confusion, disorientation, and heightened sensitivity to internal and external arisings. This phenomenon within the Buddhist tradition is sometimes referred to as falling into the pit of the void, and it entails an authentic and irreversible insight into emptiness and no self. What makes it problematic is that the person interprets it as a bad trip instead of being empowered and fulfilling the way Buddhist literature claims it will be. It turns into the opposite. In a sense, it is enlightenment's evil twin." Young argues that for most people the experience is manageable through guidance from a competent teacher. That's an important point. And though it might take months or years to get through, the end result is almost always positive. Blah, blah, blah. And then this stupid ad. 31-year-old Patrick, another fictitious name, from Tennessee, read Wherever You Go, There You Are by Jon Kabat-Zinn and borrowed the accompanying audio, blah, blah, blah. Then when his girlfriend would call to tell him about his problems, he'd look down from what he calls Cloud 9 and think, well, I can't really relate to this. I started worrying that if I kept meditating, I'd become a zombie. That's a weird effect. My personal take on that is I had a bit of that, but in my case it was manifested in a bit of kind of failing to understand how normal people process things anymore. I can remember this time I was at work and I had caused some kind of trouble, and my boss said, what were you thinking? Or what was going on at the time? And I started to answer in a Zen way, like, I don't know what was going on at the time, because that's the truth. Rather than the way you're supposed to, which is to make something up in your mind, to invent a story about what was going on at the time and try to get out of the trouble by doing that. That didn't go over well, so don't do that. His thoughts didn't feel like his own. Yeah, that's another one. Thoughts not feeling like they're your own is because you start to, within this process of doing meditation, let's talk about Zazen particularly, there is a certain letting go of your ego structure. And what that can sometimes manifest as is a kind of sense that thought is going on, but you're no longer directing it. The thing is, you never were directing it. You just invented this idea that you were directing your thoughts, but that's not what really happens. And when you start to notice that, and you don't have any sort of preparation for that philosophically or through a sangha of people who are also doing it, it can lead to a kind of panicky sense of like, oh my God, there's thoughts in my head that aren't mine. But that's not what's happening. The thoughts in your head are the same as they were before, but you're just kind of noticing what they really are. And like I said, that can be disconcerting. Many of the mechanisms that are responsible for the benefits of meditation have also, in fact, been responsible for its adverse effects. Okay? Meditation has been shown to strengthen the prefrontal cortex, an area of your brain related to attention and also executive control. I don't know anything about that. It keeps regions like the limbic system and the amygdala, both emotional centers, under control. That will result in reduced emotional reactivity. Okay, I accept that. That's brain stuff. For people who have a lot of emotional reactivity, that can be a good thing. It can make you calm, blah, blah, blah. The amygdala isn't only involved in negative emotions, but also positive ones. People in our research complain of not having any emotions, even positive ones, not feeling any kind of love or affection from their families. That's like too much of that same once beneficial process. That's a more difficult one. I think that does happen, but let's keep going. There are many types of meditation, and Britton thinks that each confers a different kind of skill. Britton defines meditation as a group of activities, blah, blah, blah. Rebecca Simon Wheeler, psychology professor at Birmingham City Unity in the UK, studies hypnosis and meditation, thinks that contemporary trends seem to have led to cherry-picked approach to meditation traditions. The purpose of mindfulness is not to make you dissociated, she argues, but our over-focus on one type could be leading to complications. There's another point that I think is useful. The people these days, and maybe some of you out there watching this are like this, have a tendency to want to pick and choose the kinds of meditation, the bits of the meditation practice process that you like, and try to invent your own meditation school. I see people do this all the time. They're doing a little bit of Vipassana, a little bit of Zen, a little bit of mindfulness meditation, a little bit of Tibetan meditation, whatever, and they're all doing it together. There are reasons these systems developed the way they did. And if you start mixing and matching, I mean, the idea that you're going to create a better meditation system by doing so can seem very attractive. But you have to remember these systems developed over, Buddhism is 2,500 years old. So some of these meditation systems like Zen go all the way back to the beginning. You know, there's research and development, I always call it, that goes way back a couple of thousand years. And if you think you're going to make a better version of that than you know, how many hundreds of thousands or millions of people over thousands of years have done, you're probably not, okay? So my recommendation is, if you're going to do a meditation practice, then stick to one and do that, and do it the way that the system has developed. Don't try to do your own version of it. Moving along a little bit, we get this interesting point here. If you were interested in learning another complex skill like playing the violin, he asks me, wouldn't you seek out a teacher? Perhaps, but we live in an age where people turn to the internet for everything. I could probably learn the violin through YouTube videos and apps. Nevertheless, he says, when it comes to meditation, a practice that alters your mind, it's time to be more cautious. And this is the main thing I would want to emphasize with this, is if you're going to really do a meditation practice, it's best to have a teacher, because your teacher has done this practice before, has faced this stuff before. Everybody who's done meditation practice long enough to become a teacher in one of the recognized versions of meditation, one of the old established ones, has done it long enough. I know there's a kind of a tendency nowadays, which is disturbing to me, to make people meditation teachers very quickly, because there are organizations that want to grow their team of meditation teachers as fast as possible. You got to watch out for that. I don't want to give you a list of who I think does this, but you can kind of figure it out if you do a little bit of research. I certainly understand the disposition to want to find a shortcut or get there quickly, but the fact is that if you really want to undertake the learning of a new skill, a particularly complex skill, having an expert guide is really important. Yes, indeed. When people have bad side effects from meditating alone, Davidson says it's hard to know what they were doing that caused the harm. Another good point, because I think what makes a lot of this stuff happens is when people get very ambitious in their practice. They have a goal for themselves that they want to achieve, and it's usually very nebulous. They have this idea of what enlightenment feels like, or maybe not even an idea. They just have a kind of a vague notion, and they keep pushing for that. And that's not a good practice, and I would strongly discourage that. The rest of the article has some interesting points, and I'll leave a link below to it so you can look at it yourself. My take on this, as I said, don't be overambitious with your meditation. Find a competent teacher and work with that teacher. The other thing is, for most people, this is not what's going to happen. People read this kind of article, and I can tell from the responses I've gotten by email that they kind of panic, like, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? This sort of thing is rare. It happens, but it's rare. In my own case, I had a couple of things that might be described as panic attacks, although I don't think they were exactly run-of-the-mill panic attacks, but let's just call them that. And I wrote about one of the biggest ones in Hardcore Zen, so you can read about that there. And then the other things were sort of akin to, and I hate to make a drug reference, but you know, I used to smoke weed some, and sometimes if you smoke the wrong kind of weed in the wrong kind of mood, you'll get all panicky, and you'll be like, oh, my heartbeat is going and I can feel it, you know, or like, oh, I'm gonna die someday, you know, and you get into these weird areas. It's sort of like that. My experience has been mostly, other than the panic attack I wrote about in Hardcore Zen, which, as I said, I think was much bigger than a normal panic attack. It's mostly been sort of a quick sort of freak out thing where I'm just going, ah, and it comes out of nowhere, and that's what makes it panickier than if you're smoking weed. You sort of know that people who smoke weed have this effect, right? But if it just comes out of the blue when you're riding a bus or something, that can be scarier, because you kind of think, oh, I'm going crazy. you're probably not going crazy. You're just establishing a new way of understanding things. So work with a teacher. Work with the philosophy. A lot of people want to just throw away the philosophical aspects of practice and just be like, I'm just going to meditate. I don't care about reading these religious books. Well, a lot of them aren't religious books. A lot of them are trying to tell you what meditation is going to be like. Dogen tried that with Shobo Genzo, and it's a very old book and very difficult. There are easier versions like Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, or any of my books. I try to address some of this stuff in my own work. These videos might help. If you don't like me, go look at somebody else. There are other people who talk about this same thing. So work with somebody. There's a community. And the thing is, you're probably not going to go crazy. It's probably not going to get that weird. What I've done in the past is back off. When I felt that the meditation was making me a little loopy, I would just say, okay, from this day to this day, I'm not going to meditate, and I'll resume it if I feel better 7 days from now or 10 days from now. That's worked real well for me. Talking to teachers and comparing my experiences to theirs has been really good. If you don't have a teacher, maybe take it a little slower than you would, and again, don't be ambitious. I think you'll probably be okay. You probably won't freak the F out and go crazy. But be aware that you're playing with something that is pretty powerful mojo. Meditation is not to be taken lightly. And yeah, take care and take it easy and take it slow, and probably nothing like this will happen to you. That's probably the best I can say in a generalized sort of video format. People write me all the time, emails with things like this, and I'll write back. I don't think that's the best way to do it, but it might help. So you can always write to me. The email address bw@hardcorezen.info is always at the bottom of all of my videos, so you'll know where to write me if you want to write me. Or find a teacher who's good. So thanks a lot. Let's see how this video works. And remember, I am supported by your donations, and there's links below to how to donate by PayPal and Patreon. That's how I make my living. And that's how I continue to do this stuff. And that's how I continue to help people who are freaking out when they meditate. So thanks a lot. See you later. Bye.